Actually, first I will speak a few words on Hatha Yoga because you are all familiar with Hatha Yoga. And with regard to Hatha Yoga, the assumption happens to be this, that Hatha Yoga has nothing to do with metaphysics. It has nothing to do with, say, the creator of the world. Are you able to hear me?
Yes.
Huh?
Yes.
Very clear. Are you able to hear me? Okay. I think yoga is based upon one of the oldest of world's philosophies, Sankhya. You must have heard of Sankhya Yoga. Sankhya also doesn't talk about metaphysics. It doesn't talk about God and all that. In the entire Patanjali Yoga Sutra, you must have heard about that. There is only one sutra which refers somewhat faintly to God. Ishvara Pranidhanadva. That is the only sutra that you find in the entire Patanjali Yoga Sutra, which means yoga has nothing to do with God, has nothing to do with metaphysics. It does not ask the question, for instance, who is the creator of this world? If there is a God, what kind of God he is? He is a transcendental God or an immanent God. Is it transcendental or immanent? Doesn't ask any of these questions. Instead, Hatha Yoga assumes one important fact. This is all the body I have. And this is the body that I know not fairly well, but to some extent. But I want to know everything about this body. Not only everything about the body, but what is happening inside my body. So I have to get into my inside, which means I have got to be proprioceptive. That is a proprioceptive in the way that I can get into my body and find what is happening in every organ of this body. Which means the kind of intimacy that you are seeking. Say, for instance, Hatha Yoga actually, in a way, is based upon a certain knowledge of the respiratory system, the digestive system, the circulatory system, and the entire endocrinology, right? You must have known something about all this actually. So I hope I am not repeating something that you already know. But these are some of the very intimate kind of organs which you have, about which we don't even think of actually in our daily transactions. We do not think about our internal body. Only when you feel sick, you think of a doctor, but otherwise you don't think about that. But Hatha Yoga, in a way, assumes it as a kind of hypothetical way of thinking. Now, this is all the body that I have. I've got to do what I can with this body. And what is there inside my body? There are various organs, for instance, and many organs don't function well. Some of the organs are very sluggish, so sluggish that I want to rejuvenate many of these organs that are there inside me. And Hatha Yoga, in a way, thinks about how to regenerate, how to, say, bring about a kind of a spiritual transformation, how to make my organs act in a particular way so that it can help me to understand myself and also understand my mind, how it works. Now, Hatha Yoga, it concentrates upon the body. It concentrates upon the body, and various aspects of the body. And also it finds out what is the optimum way by which my body can actually start functioning. So that is the entire aim of Hatha Yoga. But when you move on from Hatha Yoga, now this is something I must have said this in my introductory remarks. In my teens, I was exposed to Hatha Yoga. I was one of the earliest disciples of Sri Krishnamacharya, and my co-shishyas were B.K. Iyengar and that other person, what's his name? Joyce. They were the ones, but they were elder to me. I was in my teens, but I used to see them almost every day. So I was introduced to Hatha Yoga by Sri Krishnamacharya, and there are photographs where I am doing asana, and our friend has seen many of my photographs doing this thing, all that sort of, But unfortunately, what has happened is this: some of the postures that you find in Hatha Yoga, somehow they have been interpreted as being some kind of an imitation of what happens in a circus. You must have heard about Mark Singleton. He is a Cambridge scholar who came to me also, and he had a number of sessions with me. And he, in spite of having gone through the entire history of Sri Krishnamacharya's yoga ashrama and yoga style, in spite of his being very thorough in regard to Sri Krishnamacharya's yoga style, he was not able to fully understand, because he thinks that Krishnamacharya must have actually taken hint from a circus. That is the, what should I say, a very bad interpretation of what yoga actually stands for. And there are several aspects of yoga. I'm not going to go into all those aspects, but mainly I would like to emphasize two important aspects about Hatha Yoga, and then I would like to move on to Raja Yoga. In Hatha Yoga, there are two important aspects. One aspect I would call it basic, very generic. It is so generic that everyone should actually try to practice that kind of. And there is another aspect to this Hatha Yoga, which concentrates on what is called in Sanskrit Angalaghava, which means the lightness of body, and the flexibility of all the limbs that you have. So these are two different aspects of Hatha Yoga. But for any office goer, for any intellectual, and for someone who is not wholly absorbed into yogic style of living, but he wants to take advantage of yoga, for him the first aspect of yoga becomes important. What is called the basic postures in Hatha Yoga. That's somebody else. Huh? What I am saying now, some of which may not be very new to you,
That's very
but
very interesting.
but then I want to make use of some of these ordinarily known things and move on to something which is slightly higher than what I've been talking about. Okay. So one is the basic, what I would like to call generic the generic aspect of yoga actually deals with the basic postures which has something to do with the very important organs of the body. I will first mention some of the asanas which you are familiar with, which I would like to call generic, which is not something which looks like circus, there is not that. And it's very important that you practice these asanas, which I would like to call generic, for a number of minutes. Say, Shirshasana, Sarvangasana, Halasana, Paschimottanasana, and then and Dhanurasana, and then Bhujangasana. These are the generic postures because they address almost all the internal organs of the human body. All the internal organs of the human body. And then what is most important is you have to stay on in these postures for a number of minutes. I don't know whether you do that. I'm not aware of it. Say for instance, even in my teens, my guru Sri Krishnamacharya would ask me to stay in the posture Shirshasana for 5 minutes. 5 minutes. And then move on to Sarvangasana. Stay there for 10 minutes. Full 10 minutes I have to stay on in my teens. And then I move on from Sarvangasana to Halasana. Because you are there and then... So Halasana. And then most important about Sri Krishnamacharya's style of yoga happens to be this. It is called Vinyasa yoga. I am sure you are all aware of this, Vinyasa yoga. Why did he introduce this Vinyasa? It's for the simple reason that in order to assume any posture, whether it is Sarvangasana, Shirshasana, whatever, you have to start with Surya Namaskara. That is the basic, real basic. In order to move on to other postures, every time you want to do Shirshasana, start with Surya Namaskara. And then after Surya Namaskara, you move into, it's a kind of short leap, short leap. And with that leap, you do this, and then you go to Shirshasana. Stay there for 5 minutes, at least 5 minutes. If you want to do more, of course, you can stay there in 10 minutes. I used to stay 10 minutes, 15 minutes, because I had nothing else to do in my life. So I would stay. So that's one. And Sarvangasana, maybe 20 minutes, come on, go on, 20 minutes. But if you are a working person, if you are working in a university or in a college or in an office, whatever, at least you must be able to stay on in these postures. Shirshasana for 5 minutes, you have to stay on in that posture if you really want to get all the benefits. Because it goes straight to, straight to the, what do you call, the head, within the head, for instance. And within the head there are so many, okay. Within the head there are so many chakras. You must have heard of chakras, So all the chakras are there, actually. So the chakras also need some kind of a nourishment, and that nourishment is given because of the extra blood supply. The extra blood supply that goes into the head. So, if you are you already practicing 5 minutes of Shirshasana?
Sometimes, yes.
You are, huh?
Sometimes, not every day.
No. Are you?
Yes.
5 minutes?
Most days.
Shirshasana?
Yes, most
10 minutes Sarvangasana?
No.
Oh,
Not 10 minutes.
so I'm not saying anything new. But anyway, if you want to get the full benefits of these asanas, you have got to stay in the posture. But before you get on to the posture, start with Surya Namaskara. You know, lots of people, they don't do that. Simply they move on to the posture. That's not the way. The Vinyasa Yoga taught by Sri Krishnamacharya, it starts with Surya Namaskara. For every posture, start with Surya Namaskara, and then with a leap, you move into that posture. You know, that's what I've been doing that, you know, well, of course, now I'm an old man, 50 plus. So the 50 plus man is now talking to very younger people. You know. So the 58th man is actually thinking whether I will be able to stay on in this posture where I am talking about Hatha Yoga. But I have to get the full benefits. I have to stay on in this posture where I am talking. So that's the, okay. So that's what any yogic practice, if it has to have full benefits, have to start with Vinyasa Yoga. This Vinyasa Yoga is something unique to Mysore style of yoga. It is not there in Bombay. It is not there in Shivananda or Yogananda. You know, none of these people follow this. This is purely because after my being introduced to Hatha Yoga, in my mid-20s, I went to Swami Kuvaliananda, who was at Lonavala near Bombay, and he believed in Raja Yoga. So I have been, in a way, trained both in Hatha Yoga and Raja Yoga. I can expect what to expect from Hatha Yoga, what I can expect from Raja Yoga. Fairly, I mean, I can't say I know everything, but I have been introduced to these two important aspects of yoga culture. Okay, so now, one more thing about Hatha Yoga and then move on to how much I can go on?
As much as you like.
Okay.
As much as you like.
Okay. I can go on until my breath stops. Okay, fine, good. Yeah, because I'm giving some of these, I'm actually recapitulating some of the things about Hatha Yoga so that I can move on to Raja Yoga from that thing onwards. So in Hatha Yoga, you have this kind of a thing. There are many organs within the body which may go sluggish. It may not be functioning to its full capacity. So in order to rejuvenate, in order to sort of giving more push to all the organs of the body, including, say, the thyroid and the pituitary, you know, all these are in a way affected when you are doing Shirshasana, Sarvangasana. Shirshasana, Sarvangasana, the most important asanas in the entire spectrum of Hatha Yoga. That's what I was taught by Sri Krishnamacharya. Shirshasana, Sarvangasana, both are, and he used to call Shirshasana the principal, the royal king, that is Shirshasana. And the mantri, the minister, chief minister, that is Sarvangasana. You know, Sri Krishnamacharya used to make use of this, this terminology for small people like us. So that's what Shirshasana, Sarvangasana, the most important, especially for anyone who is working in an office or in any, and who is not wholly dedicated to yoga. For them, Shirshasana, Sarvangasana, most important. And then from Sarvangasana, you move on to Halasana. And from Halasana, you just get up, go back to what? Surya Namaskara. Surya Namaskara. And once again start. So, any posture you want to assume, start with Surya Namaskara. That's very, And with the result, some of these, about 6 of them, maybe 8 of them, these 8 postures, if we can fully get the expertise on these 8 postures, you really have started the first important platform of Hatha Yoga. Then I can see whether I can add one more thing about Hatha Yoga. Okay, when I go into Raja Yoga, if there are some echoes, I can always go back to. Actually now, the kind of Raja Yoga that I was introduced to by Swami Kuvalyananda at Lonavala near Bombay, where I became an ashramite. I used to wear a worker robe, because I was in an ashram. If you ever happen to go to Lonavala, now of course, Swami Kuvalyananda is not alive. He died a long time ago. But when I was a student, when I was in my mid-20s, Swami Kuvalyananda was very much alive, and he very much wanted me to become an ashramite, and very much wanted me to do my PhD in yoga. If I had done PhD in my yoga, probably you would have seen me with a big beard and white hair and sort of, with 2-3 shishyas. So it so happened, in spite of Swami Kuvalyananda being very close to me, and he wanted me to become an ashramite with a PhD in yoga. With all that, somehow I was always attracted to literature. So I became a student of literature. I was reading Hatha and Moby Dick and Shakespeare. I had taught Shakespeare for 40 years in almost all the universities and colleges. So you can see, but somewhere the yoga is still within me. With the result, I don't have any heart problem. I don't have any. Only thing is this knees, because of too much walking. Because of that, I have this. Otherwise, what should I say? Arogya. If we think of arogya, I think I'm fairly well off. That's the thing. All because of my training in Hatha Yoga. So that's okay. So now, I'm going to say quite a few things now about Raja Yoga, and Raja Yoga as conceptualized by Swami Vivekananda. Some of you might have heard about Vivekananda. Have you heard about it? Okay. Swami Vivekananda, I think 1896, he went to Chicago and started addressing big audiences. And the moment he started addressing my brothers and sisters, the whole audience fell into a kind of laughter, because they were never used to being addressed as brothers and sisters. Always ladies and gentlemen, never brothers and sisters. That was the first real, first real blow on the American consciousness, that here was a man who calling us brothers and sisters and not ladies and gentlemen. So that's the first. All this has been recorded, so I'm not making it up. All these are recorded, what I have read about Swami Vivekananda being at Chicago in 1896 or so, and then addressing, and then he had a huge audience. Most Americans were attracted to him. But unfortunately, what has happened is this. In the West, there is a kind of a concept which you call universalism. Universalism. everything is universal. But in the West, the Western people have conceived a kind of a universalism which can translate into its own terms whatever is foreign, whatever is outside that kind of universalism. The kind of universalism that America, England, or even Europe for that matter, the kind of universalism they talk about is the kind which absorbs, digests whatever is not within its boundary, translates them into its own terms. And that they call universalism. Say, for instance, when Swami Vivekananda started talking about, people in America said, oh, this man has plagiarized some ideas from William James. He has taken some ideas from, who is that other man? Emerson. Emerson, his very famous essay, Self-Reliance. Oh, this man, coming from India, he must have plagiarized some ideas from William James. That's how the Western universalism functions. It functions in such a way that whatever foreign is given to it, that foreign is translated into its own terms. Because those terms only they can understand. So the Western universalism, for me, at any rate, is a kind of fake. It's a kind of a fake universalism. I don't accept that kind of a universalism at all, because that is so hungry for anything which is unique. Whatever unique is given to it, it simply absorbs, digests it, and it, in a way, converts it into its own idiom. Now, that Western idiom is something not in tune with what in India we think about yoga, all that. Unfortunately, what has happened is this. I think both, to some extent, like Joyce and then that other man.
BKS Anger. BKS Anger.
Yeah. These people, they almost settled in the West. When you settle in the West, actually you absorb all those, internal, what you call, the skeleton of a philosophical postures, all those Western philosophical postures you absorb. And then gradually, whatever you have read about your own Indian theories, almost they get metamorphosed into Western idiom. So the Western idiom is a very dangerous idiom for the Indian ways of thinking. So many of us, especially because I have a PhD from a Western university. So I know, for instance, how when I was doing my PhD, I used to make use of Indian symbols. But I was doing something wrong because I was translating Indian symbols into Western philosophical notions. But when I was doing it, I didn't realize it. But now, after getting back to India, and once again, now that I am actually being exposed to Indian ways of thinking, the 6 systems of Indian philosophy that I have been introduced to, now I find that maybe what is indigenous to India, what is indigenous to India may have to be preserved the way it has been expounded by our sages, our rishis. Because our rishis didn't know what is happening in the West. They lived in the forest. They lived in a place like this, where we are now living. All the rishis. Now, that's the reason why, for instance, our Hatha yogis, but they were also exposed to Raja Yoga kind of thing because they were all rishis. And the one important thing which I have always emphasized upon is this. Why is it many of the yogic postures have been named after animals? You know, you might think about the cobra pose, Bhujangasana, the locust pose, Shalabhasana. Why is it? Because those ashramis, the rishis, they lived in the forest and they were very close to animals. They lived in the proximity of the animals. So they always in their postures, they were almost imitating the postures of the animals, you know. So when you get back to Hatha Yoga, the original Hatha Yoga, you are actually living in the proximity of animals and man. But, you know, now the Italian philosopher, what's his name? Giorgio Agamben. He has written a very good book, Man and Animal. You know, that book comes very close to our Indian ways of thinking because all this yoga has been in a way understood in relation to animals. You know, in relation to animals. The reason why, for instance, only in India, only in Indian culture, a classic like what you call one second. Now we have a lot of animal stories in India, you know, a lot of animal stories in India. And all the animal stories are such that the animals talk to men and women, and they talk to men and women in order to fare better in this wily world. How to live in this wily world and fare better, and then understand something which is other than animal. You know, all the animals actually, they talk about men and women. So that is Panchatantra, you must have heard about it. Yeah, it is a classic. And in this classic actually, the animals talk to men and women and they want to show the wisdom that you may have to follow. Now, how the Indian mind has worked during those days when Hatha Yoga was actually being invented. You know, you must have heard about 10 incarnations. You know, Vishnu descending into the world. Starts with fish, Matsyasana, you know, start with fish. Now, when you go into the evolutionary history of the world, you start with fish. And you move on, you know. If you go through all the 10 incarnations of Vishnu, you will be re-educating yourself into how the evolution has actually worked in our world. Now, it's a very rich kind of a symbolism that we have in India. The 10 incarnations, they are nothing but a kind of symbolistic view of the entire human evolution. You know, starting with fish, water, fish, move on to half man and animal, and move finally on to Rama and Krishna with their ethical sense. So, every man has to go through this evolutionary history. And when you practice Hatha Yoga, in a way, you are also moving through the evolutionary history of man. So you can see there is a lot of symbolic history around Hatha Yoga. And then it moves on into Raja Yoga. I have not even touched Raja Yoga. I can go on for another half an hour?
Of course.
Okay. You tell me when I'm boring you, you tell me how to stop.
Please continue.
Yeah, because from Hatha Yoga, I am moving on to Raja Yoga, but within that actually there is so much about the evolutionary history that you have all read about in your Western education, well, you know. So, but how this was not philosophized in India. The evolutionary history of Darwin and people like that, that was not thought of in India, but symbolically the human mind has thought about that, you know. Symbolically, human mind has thought about in India that from fish onwards it moves on very slowly, like for instance, you have what is called, I'm not getting the animals, but well, you know, oh come on, all the full the animal birds, for animals, birds, and then animals that crawl, and the animals slowly they stand up, and then finally, you know, that kind of a motion, that kind of a evolutionary motion is something which symbolically the Indian mind might have thought about. You know, that's what my way of thinking, with the result, because when somebody asked me about Vishnu having 10 avatars, how do you explain this avatar? Because you must have heard, you must have seen the film Avatar. well, you know, these avatars are incarnations. So these incarnations, man has to go through these incarnations symbolically. But earlier, it has gone through in a very historical, biological way, you know. From biological, you move on to history to philosophy. As a kind of a ascendancy in the way that you earn your knowledge. Okay, now I'm moving into so many different kind of... Now, okay, Raja Yoga. Yeah. Now, I had started talking about Vivekananda. I have a special regard among all the various seers. No, India is full of seers, you know, full of seers. Many of them are fake, but some of them are really very genuine. So I am only talking about very genuine sannyasis or anchorites, whatever name they have given up. So among the very recent sannyasis, I would rate very highly Swami Vivekananda, you know, and I will read out some of his statements. Even you will be surprised, you know. I am already surprised, but be ready to get surprised. Okay. Yeah, now I am moving on to Raja Yoga as conceptualized by Swami Vivekananda. And the Swami's version of Raja Yoga is the way he begins his discourse with what's so incredibly surprising is his robust sense of reason. Now this is something, because usually in the West, people think, oh, yoga and philosophy, these are all, you know, just hearsay. They have no philosophical basis. And most of the ideas in India, they go against rationality. Western reason, rationality is so important. So you have got to hug the Western rationality, you know, because all the Indian philosophies are based upon metaphysics. Because who has seen the soul, who has seen God, is all just a kind of a hearsay. Now, look at what Swami Vivekananda says. He begins his discourse with what's so incredibly surprising is his robust sense of reason, the unfailing sense of rationality. That's where he starts. Let me quote some of his statements. You'll be really surprised that someone in India, brought up in Indian culture like Swami Vivekananda, can make statements like this. Even when I first read it, even I was surprised because I was educated in America. well, So, now, one of his statements, when a man says he is inspired, divinity has inspired him. When a man says he is inspired and then talk irrationally, reject it. That's one of the first statement. It is blasphemy to think that all the knowledge of God is confined to this or that book. How dare men call God infinite and yet try to comprise him within the covers of a little book. See, an Indian sannyasi talking about like this. What about the Bible? What about the Quran? What about the Bhagavad Gita? And here is an Indian philosopher. He talks, how dare can you say that the entire God can be confined within a single book? And you see, how dare men call God infinite, yet try to comprise him within the covers of a little book? Don't believe blindly. There are no faith healers, no hypnotism. Certainly, it's healthier to remain wicked than be made apparently good by such morbid, extraneous control by religious fanatics. Beware of everything that takes away your freedom to think. Now that is Vivekananda. Unbelievable. Okay, and I will read more. What right do you have when you say you have a soul if you do not feel it? I have a soul. Everybody says I have a soul. But do you know how to feel that soul? If there is a God, we must see him. A soul, you must perceive it. It's better to be an outspoken atheist than a hypocrite. The devotees get only a rigmarole of words, and they are asked to live upon words. Most of us live upon words, And look at the man, he says, no, real inspiration, that means if you say that I am inspired by God, real inspiration never contradicts reason, but fulfills it. And he goes on to redefine what we call religion. We're all familiar with the notion of religion. I have my own religion, you have your own religion. But he is going to define what is real religion. Every man must eventually get to that state of super consciousness. That is religion. He calls the real religion is that when you attain super consciousness. Now, what is super consciousness? He is going to explain. Till now, religion as such, that is all religions, except Hinduism, within brackets, because I'm a Hindu. Okay. Yes, all religions, except Hinduism, are based on someone's experience, his direct experience of God, and we have to take it on belief. All prophets, they say, I have seen God. I have talked to God, face to face. And the devotees believe in, they believe in the words of what the prophet says. His direct experience of God, and we have to take it on belief. And a claim is made that such direct experiences are no longer possible at the present day. So take religion on belief. The Swamiji asserts, on the contrary, that if direct experience of God has been possible once, then it must be possible a million times. A very unusual way of talking. And then he says, the Swami makes Prana the central piece of his inquiry. What is Prana? You all know the word pranayama, right? Pranayama. Prana means breath, But according to him, prana is not breath. Breath is only a means to your understanding of prana. Now he goes on. The Swami makes prana the central piece of his inquiry. Prana is breath, respiration, the breath of life, vitality, and its seat is in the lungs, energy, vigor, strength, power, the spirit or soul. The Swami obviously got his term prana from pranayama, but that is not what he means. So, let me begin to uncover what Swamiji calls Raja Yoga and see how through this yoga one can attain true religion. So Raja Yoga proposes to put before us a practically worked out method, a method which seems to be a counterpart but complementary to Hatha Yoga. So this is a complementary to Hatha Yoga. Actually, I find there is a kind of a synergy between Hatha Yoga and Raja Yoga. And I think I will quote one important sutra from Shiva Samhita. Shiva Samhita is one of the oldest shastra that we have in India. And in Shiva Samhita, it very clearly states, Hatha Yoga is a stairway to Raja Yoga. Without Hatha Yoga, Raja Yoga does not succeed, nor does Hatha Yoga succeed without Raja Yoga. Well, you can see both the things are actually coordinated. There's a coordination between the two. There's some kind of a synergy between these two important aspects of yoga, Hatha and Raja. Okay. And I can spit some of it. Yeah, because here, of course, what I have stated in this paper happens to be this, that the whole Western world is fully satisfied in inhabiting a comfort zone. And this comfort zone is something that can be earned through yoga. That is Hatha Yoga. You follow all and you will enter a comfort zone because all your internal organs have started working well, your endocrinology is fully functioning, and your other things are also working well. So why do you have to worry about spirituality and all that, I'm all right with my heart, with everything, the blood circulation, everything is fine. So that has given you a comfort zone. So the Western world is very happy with inhabiting, this comfort zone. They are not bothered about spirituality. They are not bothered about other things. Vivekananda, for instance, he says, okay, you get all this animal health, but what are you going to do with this animal health? Your lungs, your endocrinology, your blood circulation, everything is fine. You have attained that animal health. But what are you going to do with this animal health? That's the question that Raja Yogi is asking. Okay, so now we move on to a kind of a spiritual world. Okay, so now I move on to a very important theory. It's a kind of a concept, not exactly a theory, but a kind of a concept which Vivekananda makes use of. He thinks of two important concepts. One is Akasha, and another is Prana. One is Akasha and another is Prana. Now, Vivekananda got this word Prana from pranayama, but he doesn't accept the definition of Prana as it is given by Hatha Yoga. Prana is much more important, much more. It has a whole philosophy. It has a whole, what should I say, a cosmic dimension. This prana, which is within us, within you, within everybody, has a certain cosmic dimension. He goes into this kind of cosmic dimension. So that is prana. So he says the entire universe is actually made up of two important materials. One is akasha and another is prana. But there is no dichotomy as such between these two concepts. These two concepts, in a way, are going to coordinate. They will have very shortly, after you have understood what is akasha, what you have understood what is prana, you begin to see a synergetic relationship between the two. Okay? So now, what is akasha? Akasha is simply sky, we say. No, sky is akasha. Akasha is a Sanskrit word. But akasha, I think, I will read out that akasha, the definition of akasha. Well, I don't know where it is, but anyway, I will just make out. Akasha, according to Vivekananda, is a kind of penetrative energy, and is a kind of a cosmic energy. When the world came into view, that is after the evolution, after the biological evolution, after Darwin and all those people have talked about that. The akasha is a kind of penetrative energy which has given us a kind of a world where all the things that you see have already acquired a shape, a form. Means you are not face to face with a universe which is completely pulverized. No. Already when you get into this world, or when my great grandfather, all those people, they got into this world, already they began to see the world filled with objects, and each object has its own shape, has its own form. How did this object get its shape? It is akasha. Akasha had this kind of a penetrative energy with which already, with a kind of combination, bringing elements together, the akasha was able to give you a stone with a particular shape, and a river, a particular shape of the river, where the river moves on and on with a flow. Now all this, how did it happen? Akasha is the fundamental material out of which the world has sprung. That is akasha. But Vivekananda further asks, okay, if akasha has this kind of a penetrative energy, how did it get that energy? That is the fundamental question. How did it get that energy? He says, prana. He says, prana. See how he is trying to align prana which is inside me, which is inside all of you, this prana is being aligned to cosmic forces. That you are not alone in this cosmos. You are there because the cosmic energy is actually working everywhere. Vivekananda had this kind of a divine vision where he could see, for instance, that, it is not simply my akasha giving me a particular shape, particular form, my 2 hands, 2 legs, my face. That's one kind of a shape, which of course the biological evolution has given me this. But who has given you this energy to shape out an individual like him or like me or like you? That is prana. So, Vivekananda must have got this word prana from pranayama. But pranayama doesn't simply mean breath. It is not simply the controlling of breath. It is much more, a lot more, according to Vivekananda. That's a very inspiring kind of a thing, that you are not alone in this universe. You are already being aligned to cosmic forces. The cosmic forces are actually working within you and outside you. That is prana. I will just give his redefinition of prana. Yeah. Yeah, I think I will read this one. So we need to get deeper into the body and encounter the notion of prana. Nowhere does the Swami invoke Brahman. In the Vedas and Upanishads, people talk about Brahman. Brahman is something out there, but it's also something which you can invoke. A kind of invocation would certainly bring the notion of Brahman into your life. Vivekananda doesn't talk about that. Instead, he talks about prana, because prana is something which you may call it Brahman, doesn't matter. But prana is something which is inside me, the breath, the breathing. But breathing itself is a part of something else. What is that? The entire evolutionary, biological, psychological, everything into humanity. The entire cosmos is right within you, that you are not alone in this world. You are actually aligned. I think I will read out that part, which is very inspiring. I find it very inspiring. Yeah, Swami shifts the discourse from the biopsychologistic to the phenomenological realm. Swamiji, he is wholly into phenomenology. And what is phenomenology? It is first person philosophy. When you think about the first person, not the second person or the third person, the first person philosophy is phenomenology, that it is based upon your experience. And Hatha Yoga says, this is the body that you have, and you have got to understand your body, how it functions. That is phenomenologically, proprioceptively, you are trying to understand all the organs within the body and see how the alignment is there between Hatha Yoga and Raja Yoga. That's the kind of alignment which you have to think of, Okay. Now, which as it moves into the body, because Hatha Yoga helps you to move into the body. Because you become aware of all the different organs, you become aware of all the capabilities that your body has acquired through psychobiological evolution. You have, acquired all these things, okay? So now, it moves through the body, outreaches into the cosmos, because it is prana which is infinite, omnipresent, and manifests as power of this universe. It is prana which manifests as gravitational force, as electromagnetic forces. He aligns prana with the cosmic forces. So you're not alone, whether you may feel lonely, okay, I don't have anybody, I'm actually left behind, oh God, what have you done to me? Nothing doing. You are already aligned into cosmic forces, whether you like it or not, you are there. Okay, it's prana which manifests as gravitational force, as magnetism, electromagnetic forces, and he aligns prana with the cosmic forces. Even as prana manifests as actions of the body, as the nerve currents, it transforms into thought force. Your thought also in a very closely linked to your prana. There are subtle transformations inside and outside the body. So he who controls the breath, prana, can control everything in the universe. The Swami envisages a universal dimension to prana. Can I have some water?
Yes.
No, that's not okay. So, the subtle transformations inside and outside the body. So he who controls the breath, prana, can control everything in the universe, because your breath is already aligned to the cosmic forces. So you are not breathing alone. Thank you. You are breathing with the cosmic forces. I don't wish to waste so much water. Just give me just a bit. Just a small piece. Just a small quantity. Yeah, just a small quantity. Just thank you. When I talk about Vivekananda, I get inspired. So you should pardon me, you should forgive me for this kind of outburst. Okay, there are subtle transformations inside and outside the body. So he who controls the breath, prana, can control everything in the universe. The Swami envisages a universal dimension to prana. The control of this prana is pranayama. So through pranayama, you are actually negotiating with prana. You are negotiating with prana, because you may not know, but you feel that your soul is there, already, linked to the universal cosmic forces. He controls the breath, prana. Okay. The control of this prana is pranayama. Prana is not simply breath, but it is the vital force. Even the electricity is prana. It's prana which pervades the universe and transforms itself as breath in humans, as energy centers in the human body, as the dynamics which regulates the universe. That's a very important statement for me, at any rate. Now, I will read out again this statement. It's prana which pervades the universe, transforms itself as breath in humans, as energy centers in the human body, as the dynamics which regulates the universe. So what regulates the universe is also regulating me through breath. So the world extends into the body. No, it is not simply breath, but the whole world enters into the body. And there is a continuum between the universe and the human body. So the yogi perceives the interiority of the body, That's why we use the term proprioceptive. That is a proprioception, which means you almost imaginatively, of course, you have to use your imagination, but through imagination you enter into your body and move across the various activities actually taking place within your body. So that is a proprioception. Okay, so the yogi perceives the interiority of the body, and you can actually perceive the interiority of the body when you are doing sarvangasana. I don't know whether you have felt that kind of a thing. It is not simply taking this, but when you have the Jalandhara Bandha, that is Jalandhara Bandha. When you are using the Jalandhara Bandha, at the same time when you also have the Mula Bandha, Mooladhara Bandha, you begin to experience something else, which is not simply the outcome of your body, it is something else. So, the Hatha Yoga in a way is very regulatory. It regulates the entire body and prepares it for Raja Yoga. So the world extends into the body, and there is a continuum between the universe and the human body. So the yogi perceives the interiority of the body, proprioceptively feels into the body through pranayama. Because the breath helps you enter into the body, that is through the spinal column. Okay. It's the phenomenological moment as the yogi experiences the breath, prana, move from the base of the spine through Sushumna Nadi, through several phases as you control the breathing pattern till it reaches the Sahasrara in the brain. So now we are talking about the spinal column, because at the very base, Mooladhara, at the very base of the spinal column, you have what is called a serpent-like knot of energy. Now, the yogi believes that can be released, that energy which is actually being knotted, that can be released, and that it moves on through Sushumna. There are actually three nadis, Ira, Pingala, and all, but I am not going into that. But Sushumna is a very important nadi, that's the center of the two important nadis. Through Sushumna, phase by phase, the energy moves on to the say Anahata, and then Agnya, and then finally supposed to move on to Sahasrara. That is, if the yogi really has that kind of a, what you might call a mystical experience, because that's the only word available in English, mystical, something which you can't explain, which can only feel, not verbalize. You cannot verbalize it, but you can only feel. Now that is phenomenology. Phenomenology is nothing but it takes you to the very point where you can only feel. Sometimes if you are really practicing Bhastrika Pranayama, for instance, intensely, you can move to that point where you suddenly feel that you are out of the body. You are out of the body. You are actually sort of sailing, moving in the air. That kind of a feeling that you have, that you are no longer tied down to your various organs of the body. And that one can feel when one intensely practices Bhastrika Pranayama. That's one thing I think I felt when I was at Lonavala, for instance, when I was doing Raja Yoga. when I was a young fellow, as young fellows, they are very more sensitive. As an old man, I've become a bit, what should I say, dense. The density has increased. But young fellows don't have that kind of a density. They have very thin kind of a flow, something like a flow. I must get back to I must get back to Hatha Yoga now, to some extent. That is, in Sri Krishnamacharya's style of Hatha Yoga, there is a kind of a sequential flow. I forgot to mention that. That's the reason why, for instance, I said you start with Surya Namaskara, because there has got to be a sequential flow. And even with regard to the muscles of the human body, the muscles are not wholly engaged as they are in a gymnasium. You go to a gymnasium in order to sort of feel big in the muscle. No, the muscles are secondary when it comes to yoga. But behind the muscles, you have a nervous system. The nerves move on all over the body, right? These nerves have got to move on in a kind of a flow. So that is why in Hatha Yoga, Sri Krishnamacharya's style of doing asana, there is a kind of a vinyasa, there is a kind of a sequential flow. And the sequential flow can be maintained only when you begin your Surya Namaskara with a slight leap, move into those postures. Not what Singleton says. Singleton says that Sri Krishnamacharya's yoga has borrowed from circus. That's nonsense for me. I used to argue with Singleton. He actually wrote his thesis at Cambridge University, and Cambridge University has given him a PhD. I would have given him a 0. As if Sri Krishnamacharya's style of yoga has borrowed from circus. We have nothing to do with circus. The circus is wholly based upon the muscular strength. If you have good muscles, then you can actually fight with a lion. You can fight with an elephant. Yogis are not meant for struggles, fights with elephants and lions. I don't know. Singleton was a very intelligent person. I'm not underestimating him. He's a very intelligent person, very well-read person, very learned, and he deserves his PhD from Cambridge University, but not on yoga. Unfortunately. And a number of sessions with him. Actually, he became one of my very close friends. But we used to argue a lot. And we used to argue in such a way that Singleton says, no, your Krishnamacharya has borrowed all these things from circus. I said, nonsense. Well, anyway, that's the sign of 6 o'clock. Am I boring you now?
No.
Are you
Carry on as
okay?
long as you want, please.
Okay?
Yes.
I can go on for another
Please.
As long
15
as you
minutes,
want.
half an hour?
Please.
Okay, fine.
Please.
And afterwards, I would like to have tea.
Yes, I will happily make it.
I will have earned my tea by doing this yoga.
Well deserved.
Okay. I need my kerchief. So pardon me for this interruption. Okay, so now where am I? Yeah, I admire among the two important yogis, Swami Kuvalyananda at Lonavala and Sri Krishnamacharya, my first guru, I certainly would go in for Sri Krishnamacharya. And of course, Swami Kuvalyananda, who was completely deep into Raja Yoga. So I have nothing against the person. But this sequential flow is something I would always swear by. I will always swear by this sequential flow. And apart from it, the yogic asanas, this is something I forgot to say at the very beginning. Every asana has a pattern of certain exertion of pressure. There are three of them: stress, strain, and relax. Stress, strain, relax. When you go into a posture, you stress, There's a kind of a stress because it is not something natural for the human body to assume a certain posture. After all, we don't assume postures when you go into your office or into your school or college. This is something artificial, right? Yoga itself in a way is artificial in the sense it doesn't come natural to me. So you have to exercise, so you have to first stress. You exercise some pressure in order to get into your posture. And then you strain. That is, consciously you exert that pressure further. After that, you relax. But like this, and like this. So there's a pattern of flow. And the pattern of flow is stress, strain, and relax. Every posture, every asana has to follow these three phases. But these three phases, in a way, it comes in a very coordinated fashion. There's a coordination among these three, because all of a sudden you assume a posture. But that posture will have subsumed these three phases. Okay, that's something about Hatha Yoga. So I'm moving from Raja Yoga to Hatha Yoga to Raja Yoga. It's a kind of a swing. Okay. So now I have talked about what is called proprioception, which is actually the yogi is able to enter into the body. He has a real exposure to the interiority of the body. So he experiences, now this is based upon experience, not theory, not intellectually understanding what is happening. No intellectual aspect here. It's purely a feeling, a priori. It's a kind of a priori feeling. What is that? Proprioceptively feels into the body through pranayama. That's why through breath you can enter into the spinal column. And through spinal column you can move on from one phase after another phase. But it's always through pranayama, through sushumna nadi. Now, according to Vivekananda, samadhi is not something that you simply close your eyes and go to sleep. That is not samadhi. Samadhi, according to him, is super consciousness. Means you have moved on from the conscious to the super consciousness, where you become fully aware of your being here in relation to cosmic forces, in relation to the cosmos, that you are not alone. Now I am only theorizing here. I am theorizing with you that I am not alone and all that. But it is not feeling, but a priori, if we can feel that we are one with the cosmos, a kind of super consciousness begins to enlighten you. So that is what Vivekananda is talking about. Super consciousness. And this super consciousness is something which anybody can attain, provided he goes through all these various aspects of yoga. Well, so this yoga is meant for each and everyone. You cannot simply devote yourself to a prophet and say, the prophet has seen the God, so I must devote myself to him. No such thing. If a prophet has seen the God, you can also see it. You can also see the God, according to Vivekananda. So that is super consciousness. So this is an a priori inquiry, not an empirical one. If it is not an empirical investigation, it's the phenomenological entry into the human body through the energy centers which you are able to manipulate through breath. The universe is not only at your doorstep, but appears right into the body through energy centers. If you do this, the whole universe will have entered your body. You are no longer your body, you are the universe. I don't know. You are actually risking. You are undergoing a risk. So if you think it's a kind of a risk, stay away from this. Stay away from all that. Okay. So the phenomenological entry into the human body through the energy centers which you are able to manipulate through breath. The universe is not only at your doorstep, but appears right into the body through energy centers. There are various energy centers. You all know that, the chakras, the 6 chakras and all that. So they are all energy centers in the body, and they are all located in the spinal column. From the Mooladhara to Sahasrara, they are energy centers. And you can manipulate these energy centers through breathing. If you know how to do pranayama through various phases. Okay, I have not talked about pranayama. I have some what should I say, radical opinions on pranayama. I'm not going into that. Okay. Okay, it's a phenomenological moment when you proprioceptively feel the inner body, its organs, the respiratory, circulatory, the digestive, the glandular, especially the endocrinology. You begin to feel the energy centers inside the body, and also these various organs which are actually functioning, so that you can think about God, think about your home, building a big house and whatever. So this is the structural possibility of ascent from the lower to the higher layers. We grasp the world as the world grasps us. An intimacy with the inside of the body. All these changes are phases as indicated by dharana, dhyana and samadhi, constituting a spiral theory. Trayam ekatra samyamaha. Concentrate, meditate and be super conscious. Now that is true religion. Don't accept any other religion. Just accept this super consciousness as the real religion. Of course, I'm not saying don't be a non-Christian and all that. Be a Christian. I'm not against these established religions. They have their own, what should I say, pragmatic kind of usefulness, So, if you are in Islam, be Islamic, don't be fundamentalist. If you are in Christianity, be a Christian, but don't be a radical Christian. Well, because these are all layers upon layers. But finally, you may have to give up everything in order to reach the cosmic. But stay in Christianity, stay in Islam, stay in Hinduism, but don't be fundamental. That's what that's what I would say to all my students. I have worked in all the universities. I have worked in many universities in India. So I have a number of students who have now become professors in universities. They still remember me as an old man. But I have worked in many universities in India. I have worked in Canada. I have worked in America. And I have taught so many students. Some of them may remember me, others may curse me, but on the whole, I have sort of, survived. I have survived all the universities. Okay. So I think I should end my talk with this kind of a thing, that you are not alone, that you are with the universe. And the universe has a way of entering you, and you are aligned. This alignment is very important, and that alignment is something which you can experience through pranayama, dharana, dhyana, samadhi. Thank you very much for this very patient listening.
Thank you.